Hey, it's Chelsea.
And Nina back again.
This week we're reviewing Alley Cat Strike! Exclamation point. This movie actually came out in 2000. So, in that
End of
initial
the
stream of I'd say the golden years of DComs.
Yeah. I think that's a good...
Because they only started in, 98?
Yeah.
So it was I'd say 98 through 2003-ish. It was pretty dependable that you were going to get some good Saturday night content.
This is true. And in this particular iteration of this lovely little franchise, we're going bowling, y'all.
We are.
That's the story.
We're on
so there's this town in undisclosed.
It's somewhere cold because they're wearing jackets. They're wearing
fall
big jackets.
colors.
I'm thinking Connecticut.
That would make sense.
Only because it's West Appleton and East Appleton, and that's just either
they're
upstate New York or Mass.
Let's say New England.
Yeah,
let's
just New Englandish.
Or it could be no. They would have had accents if it was Midwest North.
Yeah, no.
Okay, let's say New England. We're gonna say New England. But yeah, these two towns, East Appleton and West Appleton, which have been rivals for an undisclosed period of time.
Yes. And
unfortunately, they are about to merge into
one school,
Appleton town.
Yes.
And
because bureaucracy.
Yeah. And consolidation. Sometimes it's necessary. And so these kids at this junior high, for some reason, this town is really into its junior high school sports.
Very odd.
It's very unclear as to why. But they're into these junior high school sports, and every year they compete, East Appleton and West Appleton, junior high, I guess, varsity teams.
Yeah.
Compete for this trophy called the Big Apple, which I'm not going to lie, I'm from New York, and it's a little bit offensive. You'll understand why when we get deeper into how I feel about this film. But, yeah, so they compete for this thing, and this year, in the big basketball game, it ends up being a tie, right? So they don't know who's won the Big Apple, so they have to do a tiebreaker game, and it has to be a specific sport.
Some random sport.
Yeah.
It can't be basketball, it can't be football, it has to be one of the,
the other club sports. And the only one that both schools have, the only team that both schools have is a bowling team.
Because that's realistic.
Exactly. So now all the kids who are on the bowling team in the West Appleton team, who have been, in their minds, outcasted from their fellow peers at this junior high. Now they are suddenly put on the spot because it's up to them to win this trophy. But plot twist. The star athlete of the school, at the beginning of the year, signed up for the bowling team as a joke and put his name on the roster.
Right.
But because his name is on the roster, and his dad's the mayor, and the principal and his coaches, everyone's pressuring him, and they're like, you have to bowl.
Yeah.
You can do anything. You're an amazing 13-year-old athlete.
And you're black.
And you're black.
His name is
have
Todd.
to do it.
By the way.
Yeah, and his dad is Ray Campbell from
Sister.
And so he goes and he joins the team, and it just becomes, one of those Motley Crue underdog
type
sports stories.
Jock joining in with the nerds.
Yeah, and, they learn from each other. They learn to love each other and respect. Love is a strong word. They learn to at least respect each other.
Right.
And they end up, winning the Big Apple.
Yep.
And there are also other little things, the kid, he loves, what's his name? Ken? No, Ken is the black kid.
Ken's the black kid, no. His name is Alex.
Alex, there we go. Alex, his dad owns a bowling alley, which is why he loves bowling so much, and he's so into it. And the bowling alley has been sort of, it's on the verge of going out of business, But because, with this new attention that it's getting from the town, they get to revitalize the bowling alley and make it cool again. So it's one of those stories, it's just like, old things coming back to life.
Right. It's like a nostalgia kick.
Yeah, they like to dress in 50s clothes.
Right.
Bowling shirts, and Kaylee Cuoco wears a lot of hoop skirts and
sock hop outfits. it's interesting. I think is the way to put it.
Diplomatic of you.
And so let's get into the review of Alley Cat Strike! ! So I think the biggest thing that we noticed was the idea that this felt very Make America Great Again. You can kind of recognize some of the same rhetoric that we've heard recently in this film that came out in 2000. Alex and, his minions, they're all very much nostalgic for the 50s, him being the most so.
And let's make this clear, for a period of time that they never experienced.
Right.
Because they are 13.
In 2000. Which means they were born in, 88?
87.
Yeah, they're barely, they basically
like their parents barely experienced it.
Or were born at the end.
So,
it's a very interesting thing to then
to sort
want to bring back.
Hold on to. And I think that, so they're kids, right? So obviously it's a thing of, his dad owns this bowling alley. Mm-hmm. He has a very strong attachment to the bowling alley.
Right.
Maybe less so because of the bowling itself, even though that's the way that it's talked about and that's sort of the focus of the film. It's probably less so about that. It is probably more so about, the place that he grew. Because it's crumbling.
That lifestyle.
But yeah, about this place where he grew up, where he probably spent all of his time after school. And, there's this whole bit in it about how he buys all of his clothes in the old magazine that he found in the back of the dumpster of the bowling alley that was just, bowling shirts. And it's weird. It's a weird thing to do. But I can understand it sort of from that perspective. And so the entry point is bowling. And that, it might be very much a misplaced nostalgia, where it's what he actually is sort of longing for is sort of the ease of, I guess, youth, even though, again, he is 13. I guess.
I think it's also...
True child.
Swing is very big in the film.
Very big.
So I think he's very much... He feels like he's an old soul. I think that's what it is. He listens to Swing, his heart sings, and he feels like... Oh, I wish I was at a time where this was cool and girls wore, poodle skirts, and I was running around here with the bowling, I'm wearing a bowling shirt and I'd be the coolest kid in school. Whereas
so I get, you could, we could place it, and, and I'm not gonna lie, when I was a kid, I loved the shit out of this film.
Me not so much.
But the problem here is that watching it now, in this context, it is so... Because it's just no secret at this point. The 50s were pretty not great for a lot of people.
Unless you were a right straight man, you were not...
You were probably not having a good time.
You were not living your best life in the 50s. If you were a rich white woman, maybe, but you still had to kowtow to your husband.
Yeah.
And
anybody else, we could go into all
you.
of the reasons why that's a problem, but if you're listening this far, I would assume that you already know all those reasons why that's a problem. And so you're coupling that in this film with this very odd thing that these kids do, where Alex and his friends, they think that they're rejects and outcasts and being bullied, but it's very, watching it now, it's very not inflicted, but it's self-segregation and self-separating.
Yeah. They do it to themselves.
Completely. You know, like, they don't... There's no instance in the film where anyone does anything to them, any of their peers do anything to them that, malicious, at least, that we would consider bullying or is, like, deeply malicious.
People don't bother them. Like, that's
like what people literally... Thing. It's more that they're, like... If anything, they're invisible. Like, if anything, you can do that. Like, they're invisible.
And people don't pay attention to them. But
it's also middle school. Like, everybody... Like, I don't know if you remember middle school and high school, but it's... Everybody who wasn't a part of my friend group was invisible to me. Like, I didn't... Like, I'm not interacting with you.
I feel like for a lot of people... For a lot of high schools, it tends to be... Not for every high school. I think there are some high schools where it is clear just, like, popular, and then it goes down from there, and there's a clear hierarchy. But I feel like for most schools... It's very much just like, you know, the kids that maybe like most people are friends with. Yeah. And that would be the popular crew. And then everybody else just kind of has their own things going on. And it's fine. You know, like, so
that's not the same as, like, you know, getting your head stuffed in a locker. Or, you know, it's not that bullying has to be, like, violent. It can be psychological too, but it's like,
none of that was going on in this film, though.
You know, no one's running around, like, I don't even know what.
Nobody even calls them anything.
Yeah, like, nobody even calls them
the weirdos or the 50ers or, you know, like, there's there's no weird name that's going around for them, because there are a lot of Disney movies where that does happen.
Yeah, and this is not the case in this one.
It's so weird.
So that's a very weird thing about it. And then so there's that, and then on top of that, you have this level of, like, there's this racial undertone to it, because, I mean, oh, hold up, actually, before I get there, there's also the larger issue, not larger issue, it's not the larger issue at all, but there's this other issue of the fact that this actor that they have playing this little outcast, like, alright, I don't necessarily believe, looking at him, that he would be an outcast.
No.
You know? Like, even if he was into weird stuff, people would just be like, oh, yeah, Alex is into weird stuff. It wouldn't be, because and it's going to sound like, you know, it's a little, but, you know, it's the society we live in.
We love toxic femininity.
He's way too pretty for that.
Like, he's literally way too pretty.
He's little with his baby blue eyes.
He's like a handsome young dude. Like, I'm like, there's no way.
He's a cute little kid. And it's just like the chances of him not being able to, like, easily survive in that environment of nothing but hormones and, you know,
when that's all that anybody cares about at that time.
Seems unlikely to me. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say.
I think it's just and I feel like they've done the bullying thing before, but I feel like normally it's more believable with the person being bullied. In this one, and also in this one, he's not being bullied, but it's like normally the person that's the outcast, you can believe it. Like, not that they're ugly or not that they're whatever, but it's just like, oh, well, you can see how, like, okay, well, this girl has clearly just got her life together a lot more than this one. But it's like this one, between him and then Robert Richard, who plays Todd, you're just like, y'all are both on the same level of fineness, so why you would just, I feel like in a high school setting, you would just both link up. Like,
just pretty eyes.
It would just literally pretty eye gang. And it would just happen just naturally. So that part was kind of a little
weird. But the actual larger issue is that there is this undertone in it, because Todd, the star athlete played by Robert Richard, is black. And it's like these little... Alright, so they do have one black friend in this, like, outcast crew.
Ken.
His name is Ken.
Ken.
But, yeah. Alright, but it's like, you have this kid who isn't, like... You're, like, watching it today from these eyes, you're watching a kid who works hard to be good at what he's good at.
Yep.
Like, he's a star athlete, but it's because he is, like, actually talented, but also practicing and wants to get better at everything. Mm-hmm. And, like, even part of the friction in the beginning of him having to join the team is, you know, them being like, you know, he's getting up and he's practicing, and they're, like, laughing at him.
Right. They're not trying to
support him. And it's not even that they should only be supporting him. It's like, but you guys are all a team. Like, if you see him messing up, like, why don't you tell him how to bowl?
Right,
Like, because he didn't walk in and
bowled.
say, I'm gonna, you know, like,
right.
I'm gonna knock this out of the park. Or he did kind of have a little bit of bravado about
right.
it. But as all jocks do. But it's just like,
he never came at them crazy, so that's why it's always wild that they come at him crazy.
Yeah,
like,
they come at him and his friends
they come at him
crazy. And like, all right, Todd's friends are away too, but it's like they come at him crazy, and it just, that coupled with this nostalgia for the 50s, it makes it, watching it today, just very off-putting.
Yeah, Alex feels like an incel. Like, it's just like you're growing an incel slowly, who's just like, no, I hate women, I hate the blacks, I hate it all. And it's just like, that's literally what it feels like.
That's
it's building
probably
towards.
what's gonna, it's gonna morph into something a lot more sinister.
And it's very
and
odd.
it all started in a bowling alley, so
it did. But actually, to go back to our whole thing about them not being bullied, early on in the film, there's this time where the first time we meet Todd is because our little gang of bowlers is walking around school, and then he comes over to them with one of his friends. Is like, "Hey, are you guys going to the pep rally?" Literally says it like that, like just like as a question, because he's a basketball player. He's like, "Hey, you guys going to the pep rally?" And they're like, "Fuck off, Todd." That's literally it. They don't say that, but
it's not the exact words that they use.
But they basically are just like, "Get away!" Like, no, why would we ever go to a? But like, it's
that's
just like,
that's more on the nose.
And he literally looks at them like, "Yo, what is all this vitriol for? Like, I just asked y'all a question."
Yeah, and it's just, it doesn't make. It's not that it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't make any.
Their reaction
sense.
was so unnecessary. Like, it was just like, "Yo, you could just say, no, I don't feel like it," and he would have been like, "Okay."
Yeah, and there really isn't like much more to say about it. It's just that simple. Like, it's just these.
Are they secretly the bullies?
Who? That's what we said. We were like, are they
y'all bullying
actually?
People? Because
Like,
I think
y'all
they even
come to
call one of his friends like a name or something later on. Like, I feel like they're actually the bullies in this movie.
And it's just so deeply unnecessary. And, and even through all of that, Todd and the other kids, like, when Todd is like, hey, like, why don't you guys come to this party?
Right.
Hey, Alex, why don't you
And
come?
they
start
mad
to
at
be
him.
friends, like, none of the kids are like, ooh, you brought Alex to the party? Like, that doesn't happen. There's no moment like that.
Nobody has issues with Alex and his friends.
Has problems with them.
It's literally all in their heads.
And I guess, I guess there's also a part where it's like, there's that running theme again of, Alex and Co need therapy. For a completely different reason than, most of our situations. Like, it's not like a dead mom, dead dad thing. It's just confusion. Just a deep sort of self-victimization that's going on.
It almost sounds like they're wishing to be bullied so they'd have something to
actually complain about, which sounds like a lot of the lighter hued folk.
Yes.
Of the world. Shout out to the UK. But yeah. It's just not. There isn't. I don't think there's really much more. I don't want to give it traction. Like, I don't want you guys to watch this film. I don't think
this is very much like a film where I'm like, does it have a lot of substance? No, like,
it doesn't. I don't think it does.
It's pretty minuscule, and it's just very like, ooh, like overall, like even once they eventually like team up and Alex kind of gets over his issues, and the rest of them get over their issues with Todd. It's so it always just feels kind of icky.
Yeah. Although there's a kind of cool, like, the way that they win the bowling match is kind of cool.
Right.
Because it's the little one, it's
who
always
talks.
Always talks?
She's the one that always talks, right? She's always talking, but she never plays.
Yeah. She sits on the side, and we, like, never see her pick up a bowling
She's
ball.
She's literally, like,
she talks
cash shit, but doesn't have anything to back it up. So they finally are like, girl, you gotta back your shit up.
Exactly. No, but she does, like, a cool thing, because it's, like, it's a 7-10 split. Mm-hmm. And she, like, does a cool thing where she, like, spins the ball around her finger and, like, rolls it very gently down the lane. And we should check the physics on that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually
know if that's a real thing, but it works. And
if you're a physicist, tell us, please.
Please let us know. Movie physics are important.
Yes.
But yeah. So Chelsea,
would I show this to my children?
Would you show this to your children?
No, if they want to see Robert Richard, they can watch One-on-One.
That's fair. I agree very fully. I just think that it doesn't. There aren't any lessons from this that I want my kids to take away.
Yeah, no.
Except maybe from Todd, the thing of just stick
to your guns.
Stick to your guns and don't. If somebody's being a dick to you, that you don't have to do it back.
Right, being the bigger person.
Always try to be the bigger person. But again, they can learn that in other things. They don't need to watch this.
Yeah.
It just feels like something that is deeply outdated, and it's just not. Yeah, they're just no. I wouldn't want my kid walking away from it thinking that it was sort of
okay.
Yeah, that it was okay to treat anyone the way that those kids, those little bowling kids treat the rest of the people around them.
They're the real bullies.
Yeah, or walk away with the sense that the things that they like are better than the things that other people like.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a healthy way of looking at the world.
I think overall that's the big issue with this film is they clearly have this. Alex especially has this huge superiority complex where he thinks he's smarter than everybody and better than everybody.
Yeah.
And therefore, everything that he values is better than what everybody else values. And it's dude, that's not true.
It's objectively not true.
It's just not true. You feel like you're special because you play some old-ass game. And it's calm down.
Literally calm down.
Literally just calm relax. Down. We're happy you found a hobby, but it does not have to be this serious.
Yeah, so... That's our take.
Yeah.
On Alley Cat's strike. I'd say strike through. Just don't even.
Yeah, I really wouldn't bother with this one.
Unless by some odd chance, you do also yearn for that time and have listened to this whole thing so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless that's you. Because you know what? If you do, go ahead. Go ahead.
Maybe this will be the film for you if you're also nostalgic for the 50s.
But I would say for everybody else that is probably not white and male.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah, just don't bother with this one, honestly.
Alright, well, I think that's our take.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have one that we can actually recommend for you next week.
Yeah. Oh God.
Alrighty.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.